In December 1941, America's Pacific War did not begin with victory. It began with retreat. As Japanese forces swept across Southeast Asia, tens of thousands of American and Filipino troops were pushed into the jungles of the Philippines. Starving, sick, and outgunned. What followed was one of the darkest chapters of the early war. A desperate last stand on the Bataan Peninsula. The fall of Corregidor. And a brutal march that shocked the world. This is the story of how the Philippines fell and why its loss reshaped the Pacific War. Before the war, the Philippines stood at the crossroads of empire. An American Commonwealth since 1898. The islands were both a symbol of U.S. influence in Asia and a strategic gateway between Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. For Japan, controlling the Philippines meant securing vital sea lanes and protecting the southern advance toward oil-rich territories, like the Dutch East Indies. For the United States, losing them would expose the entire Pacific. But despite the warnings, the islands were dangerously unprepared. American and Filipino forces lacked modern aircraft, tanks, and supplies. Defensive plans assumed reinforcements would arrive. Reinforcements that would never come. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, the clock in the Philippines began ticking. Just hours after Pearl Harbor, Japanese bombers struck Clark Field, destroying much of America's air power on the ground. The invasion followed swiftly. Japanese troops landed across Luzon, overwhelming coastal defenses and forcing Allied commanders into a grim decision: abandon Manila and retreat. General Douglas MacArthur ordered his forces to fall back to the Bataan Peninsula, a rugged jungle stronghold meant to buy time. It was a strategy born of necessity, not confidence. Behind them, Manila was declared an open city. Ahead lay disease, hunger, and relentless enemy pressure. The Battle of Bataan had begun. On Bataan, the Allied army fought on borrowed time. Supplies ran out quickly. Food rations were slashed again and again. Men weakened from malaria and dysentery were sent back from the front. Despite everything, Filipino and American troops held the line for months, far longer than Japan expected. Each delay disrupted Japanese timetables across the Pacific. But the cost was catastrophic. Artillery shells were rationed. Medical supplies vanished. By April 1942, resistance was no longer possible. On April 9th, tens of thousands of exhausted troops surrendered. What followed would become infamous. The surrender at Bataan did not bring relief. It brought horror. Captured Allied troops were forced to march over 60 miles in brutal heat without food or water. Anyone who collapsed was beaten or executed. Civilians who tried to help were shot. Thousands died along the road. The Bataan Death March became one of the most notorious war crimes of the Pacific War. A symbol of the cruelty prisoners would face for years to come. For those who survived, imprisonment was only the beginning. Even after Bataan fell, one fortress still held: Corregidor, a rocky island guarding Manila Bay, had been nicknamed the Gibraltar of the East. From tunnels carved into stone, American and Filipino defenders endured constant bombardment. Food ran out. Water became contaminated. The wounded piled up underground. In May 1942, Japanese forces launched their final assault. Outnumbered and cut off, Corregidor surrendered on May 6th. The Philippines were now firmly in Japanese hands. For the United States, it was the largest surrender in its military history. Before Corregidor fell, General MaCarthur had already escaped to Australia, famously vowing, "I shall return." His departure became a symbol of both humiliation and determination. Japan now turned its attention west, toward Burma, India, and China. The fall of the Philippines opened the door to the Burma campaign, threatening Allied supply lines and expanding the war deep into Southeast Asia. What began as a rapid conquest was becoming something larger and far more dangerous. The fall of the Philippines was a devastating blow, but it was not meaningless. Every day Bataan held slowed Japan's advance. Every sacrifice exposed the realities of the Pacific War. The suffering endured there hardened Allied resolve. And when MacArthur returned in 1944, the memory of Bataan and Corregidor shaped everything that followed. The Philippines had fallen, but the war for the Pacific was only